Near the training field, some maids gathered anxiously to see the Marquess. They excitedly gossip about the Marquess's beauty, his lovely green eyes and blonde hair, and his imposing figure when he wears the knight's uniform, not to mention his exceptional swordsmanship. They sigh, emotional and in love, but the new maid doesn't seem very impressed. Then the older one explains that besides all that, the Marquess has an impressive aura, a delicate golden glow that is striking, beautiful, and at the same time imposing. Even so, the new maid questions how the Marquess can be more popular than the commander of the 1st Battalion. After all, he is a duke, one of the few who possesses an aura in the kingdom, and he is very handsome. One of the maids spots the Marquess arriving, while the other explains that the reason the Marquess is more popular than the commander of the 1st Battalion is because she is the first and only female Marquess, Laurelia von de Ville, commander of the 2nd Battalion of Knights, and also a Marquess, besides being the beautiful protagonist of this story. She walks through the corridors of the training area smiling, making the maids blush because of her beauty and kindness, and leaving sighs in her wake. The newcomer is impressed, and the older maid laughs, saying that now she must understand why she is so popular. The other maid notes that Laurelia is once again visiting the office of the commander of the 1st Battalion, and that she has been doing this frequently lately. The young maid comments that they are probably discussing matters of utmost importance for the defense of the kingdom. Leah bursts into the office and almost shouts for a minute of the commander's time. She quickly adds that even if he is not free, he should spare some time for them to resolve this important matter. Without waiting for a response from him and clearly a bit irritated, Laurelia continues, saying that once again the Knights of the 1st Battalion have broken the rules and gone to pick a fight with the Knights of hers. Noticing that the Duke and commander of the 1st Battalion, Edgar von Fangirl, has not taken his eyes off the document he is reading, she asks if he is really listening to her. He almost sighs in boredom and replies that this is the 46th time she has informed him about such events. A bit more irritated, Laurelia says that this is because nothing has changed from the other 45 times. And the Knights of the 1st Battalion continue to provoke those of the 2nd. And despite her having said this thousands of times to him, he does not seem to care. Which is why she reminds him once again that unnecessary disputes between the battalions only serve to tarnish the reputation of both sides. Edgar remains almost motionless and unshaken even after Laurelia says all that. And this seems to irritate her even more. She slams her hand on the commander's desk, saying that if they are not listening, it is better for their commander to make them listen, because next time she will punish all of them with her own hands. The two stare at each other for a minute, when Edgar finally seems to take his eyes off the document, and the hatred almost overflows from Laurelia's gaze. She reprimands him, saying that he should at least look at the person when she is talking to him. It is the minimum of education and courtesy expected in such a situation. After saying this, Leah storms out of the office, slamming the door hard behind her. As soon as she leaves, Edgar crumples the document he was holding, looking a bit frustrated. Then we see his face all red with embarrassment. The poor Duke Edgar was trying to compose himself in the presence of the woman he is in love with. The Empire's only female Marquess, Laurelia von de Ville. This is her story. A story of love and companionship, full of mysteries and twists, where a strong and powerful woman falls in love with someone she considered to be her enemy. This story begins on a calm spring afternoon, where the family enjoys a lively afternoon tea. The older man praises the young blonde, his son Belforce, for being recognized by the king as a prodigy mage. In fact, the kind of mage that is born only once every 100 years. The mother says she is very proud of her son, and Belforce humbly replies that it was all thanks to them. He then asks about his sister Leah, if she has arrived to inform them of anything, as he is worried that she has not yet arrived. But as soon as he finishes the question, Leah arrives, apologizing for the delay, saying she lost track of time while sparring. But the father warmly welcomes her, saying that she actually arrived at the right moment. His mother, showing a pile of letters on the table, says that Leah needs to take a look at them as they are the most recent marriage proposals. Belforce comments to his father that his older sister is really quite popular. He remembers that her former classmates called her a social diamond. His father laughs, saying that she is his girl, making his sister blush with embarrassment, and his father. His father takes the opportunity to ask if any of the suitors have caught his daughter's interest, and she replies that not yet. But she knows that with Belle entering the Tower of Wizards, the family will need an heir, and therefore she will try to choose someone as quickly as possible. The mother scolds her daughter, saying that marriage only happens once, and therefore she needs to be more prudent and choose carefully. The father reinforces the mother's words, saying that Leah doesn't necessarily need to bear an heir. He laughs, saying that who knows, Belle might at some point give up being a wizard and marry and have children. Belle retorts, saying that without knowing, he could invent a magical tool that would allow wizards to retain their mana after giving birth. The parents then comment that, who knows, the third child they are expecting might be a boy and could take over as heir. The mother adds that this would be great, but if it's a girl, she will also be very loved. They start to act all mushy with each other, leaving their children a bit embarrassed and at the same time proud to see how much their parents love each other. Leah looks at that happy scene, thoughtful. She tells us that she actually loved seeing her parents' love and how happy it made them, so much so that they were an inspiration for her to start her own family. But maybe she took for granted that that happiness would last forever, and never imagined that things would go the way they went. And unfortunately, a few days after that warm family afternoon, Leah and Belle found themselves at the funeral of their beloved parents who had passed away in an accident. Belle cried uncontrollably while Leah seemed to be in shock, unable to believe that this was happening. The nobles who attended the funeral, without the slightest sense of decency, gossiped about the incident, especially curious about what would happen to the family since Belle is a wizard. And this practically means that they died without leaving a viable heir to assume the title of Marquis. Many speculated that the family would surely lose its seat on the Council of 12. Belle, upon hearing such insensitive gossip at the funeral of his beloved parents, becomes irritated, rightly so. But before he can do anything, Leah stops him, saying that he should just ignore such empty people. He turns to his sister and promises that he will continue the family, and that magic is only... Leah interrupts him before he can finish his sentence, reminding her brother how proud their parents were of the great wizard he would become. And that's why she asks him not to throw away something so important. Belle seems reluctant. Determined, Leah says that there are other alternatives and that she would continue the family lineage. The two embrace emotionally while the rain falls heavily, as if the gods were also crying for the death of our protagonist's parents. Sometime later, a heated meeting takes place in the royal castle. Some nobles are incredulous at the suggestion of having a woman marquis. They say this is unacceptable and that she should lose the title, or that the title should go to her future husband and not to her. A blonde nobleman named Jean Roland says that the Council of 12 is composed of high-caliber nobles, so having a woman on the council would be an outrage, and other nations would look down on the kingdom. The king, after pondering this, when Leah says that she will prove her worth. After all, the law states that a woman can only assume a title after proving her worth, which means that if she proves herself, she will have the right to the title unquestioningly. Curious, the king asks how she intends to do that? She replies that she intends to do it with her sword, just like her father, who was the commander of the knights. Jean comments with disdain, saying that it seems the lady believes swords are ornaments. Not taking the insult lying down, Leah retorts, asking how he will deal with the shame when a simple ornament brings him to his knees. The two glare at each other with anger in their eyes, creating a tension so thick it could be cut with a knife. But the tension is broken by a loud laugh. It belongs to Kane, the crown prince. He comments playfully that the lady's spirit is already enough to defeat the Archduke. He turns to the king, asking if he is also not curious to find out if the Archduke can defend his knees from a mere ornament. Kane suggests that the council let the two face off, and if the lady wins against the Archduke. Jean insists that there should not be a female marquise. The prince says that if he is so sure about all this, all he needs to do is win. Jean gets irritated, but agrees with the prince and says that if he loses, he will recognize Lady Deville as marquise. Only if she loses, she will have to marry a man chosen by the council. So if Lady Deville lost and Belforce became the new marquis, the nation would end up losing a valuable mage. Therefore, they questioned whether the council should take measures to protect such important human resources. The king comments that the Archduke had a great idea. The prince, trying to change things, comments that one of the council members is not present and that perhaps they should not make an important decision without him being there. The king retorts that nothing is more important in the empire than his point of view. He then addresses Leah and asks if she agrees with the proposal. Although she thinks it is a bad proposal, she doesn't have much choice, so she stands up thanking His Majesty and determined to win this duel at any cost. After all, this is the only way to protect what remains of her family and honor the memory of her parents. The scene cuts to a blade slicing through the air with a sharp sound. The opponent raises his sword to block, and with that, the two weapons clash forcefully. Clang! The impact resonates in the air. Leah is pushed back by the force of Jean's counterattack. She grips the sword tightly, her arm trembling from the impact. "Ur!" escapes her lips, but she does not yield. The blades clash again. Clang, clang, echoing across the field. Jean seems unshaken, as if that fight were too easy for his skills. But Leah is not joking around. She fights not only against Archduke Jean, but to prove that she is worthy of her family's title. She attacks Jean again, who blocks her attack with his sword, and soon after, he attacks her. But Leah quickly realizes and throws herself away, narrowly escaping Jean's attack. He smiles confidently, saying that he is somewhat impressed because she is a bit more talented than most noble children, but even so. Jean lunges at Leah with speed, who struggles to block the Archduke's attack. He stares at the young woman, finishing his sentence by saying that her skills are clearly not enough. And then, Leah's sword breaks. She looks incredulously at it. The Archduke smirks, mocking the young woman, saying that it really seems that swords suit her better when used as ornaments. And he loudly comments that it is shameful that the prince believed so much in the lady. Cain just shoots an irritated glance at Jean. The king, noticing that Lady Deville does not seem able to continue, raises his hand to end the duel while he begins to say that she was brave for trying. "Not yet, Your Majesty. This duel is not over," says Leah, as she grips the hilt of her sword tightly. Jean begins to criticize the lady for interrupting His Majesty's speech, but stops speaking as soon as he notices Leah's sword starting to shine intensely. Prince Cain looks excited, realizing that Leah is manifesting an aura. The Empire of Rohlan is a place where magical power is passed down through generations, and magic has long been the source of strength for the Empire. Thus, the more mages existed in the Empire, the greater the nation's power. But mages have always had a fatal flaw. When they give birth to a descendant, they lose their magical power. And so, plagued by a shortage of mages, the Empire has begun to rely on a new hope, a swordsman capable of wielding the power of Holy Light and Aura Master. The king becomes extremely excited to see that Lorelia can manifest an aura and ends up becoming the fourth Aura Master of the Empire. So the moment Lorelia von Deville's aura manifested, the king stood up and proclaimed that everyone should show respect to the new Aura Master. And at that moment, her title took on a completely different meaning. And the inauguration ceremony held for Marquis de Ville, one of the specially chosen few for whom an aura has manifested, was remembered as being more splendid, more grand than any other. And after that, 3 years passed. In a training field, we see a man preparing to punch another person. Leah observes the scene as she unsheathes her sword. She scolds the soldiers from both battalions, saying that the small training battle is going on for too long. But as the men seem to ignore her, she makes a cutting gesture in the air with her aura to get their attention, and they finally seem to stop for a minute and realize that they are in big trouble since Leah looks furious. He quickly stands up while they try to blame each other for the chaos. She rubs her temples in frustration, asking the men if this is a battalion or a daycare. Then she throws a sharp look at Vice Commander Daikon, asking how many times she has had to scold him recently, and if it will be necessary for her to speak with his superior. Daikon strangely gets excited at the idea of Leah talking to his commander. Leah, not understanding, questions if he hit his head during the fight. Smiling, she concludes that it seems the commander of the Blue Falcons Battalion has no interest in disciplining his subordinates. So it looks like she will have to do it for him. Realizing they are in trouble, the soldier from the Blue Battalion whispers into a communicator asking for His Majesty to come help them. On the other side, we see the communicator that should be in the prince's ear on the table while he enjoys afternoon tea. Unfazed, he comments that it seems his plan has stopped working. He then picks up his teacup and winks at the commander in front of him. The commander of the Blue Battalion reminds the prince that he had already asked him not to act this way and to stop making these crazy plans. Instead, he should focus on his real duties. The commander points to the royal secretary Ordo behind the prince, commenting that he is clearly exhausted from having to do both the prince's and his own duties. Ordo, visibly exhausted, takes the opportunity to ask the prince if royal secretaries can resign. Cain just gives Ordo a small poke, smiling. He then turns to the commander and asks why he did a better job when the Marchioness came to see him. After all, if he had acted the right way, the members of the DML club wouldn't be suffering like this. The commander looks confused at the prince, questioning which club he is talking about. Cain is surprised that he doesn't know the famous DML club. He explains that DML club stands for Duke and Marquis Love Fan Club, so DML for short. And even though they didn't ask for permission from him or the Marchioness, still, yes, the Crown Prince represents all of us. All right, who wants to sign up for the club? The commander gets irritated and tells the prince that he will report the club as an illegal assembly based on impure thoughts. Kane retorts that he is being unfair since they work so hard to get into trouble with the Marchioness just so he has a reason to meet her. My God, I'm loving this prince scheming for them to be together. But Kane counters, saying that thanks to the club members, the commander is now very close to fulfilling his dream of finding love. Then suddenly, through the communicator that was on the table, Leah's voice can be heard. She says she is really disappointed with Sir Edgar. He, besides being very absent, seems to completely ignore the problems of his knights, and he seems to do everything to annoy her. The prince gives an awkward laugh and starts to say that it's all right to the commander while quickly grabbing the communicator and squeezing it in his hands to try to destroy it. Then he comments that things have momentarily gone in a not-so-nice direction, but it's just a small misunderstanding, and everything will be fine in the end. But Edgar seems not to have paid attention to what the prince just said. He was too busy thinking about what he just heard from his crush. Until then, he turns to the prince and asks if he really believes that Commander Lorelia thinks he is a terrible person. Quickly, Kane tries to ease the situation. He tells Edgar not to be so pessimistic and that maybe she used to hate him a lot, and now she hates him a little less. And if he thinks positively, it could be worse than we already are. The prince's words seem to have only made our poor commander more stressed. Edgar lets out a long sigh and then reminds the prince that, as he has said before, he will take care of his love problems himself. And that, besides that, His Majesty knows very well that both he and the Marchioness must continue their family line. So he would like the prince not to interfere in these matters anymore. Out of nowhere, the communicator resurfaces from the ashes and starts working again. And with that, we hear Leah's voice once more. She says she will leave the rest of the matters in the care of her vice commander, as she has a commitment she needs to attend to. Ignoring everything Edgar just said to him, the prince becomes curious about what Leah's commitment is. He sits next to the commander and starts trying to make him curious too, commenting that he must be dying to know who Leah is going to meet. However, Edgar stands up, informing that he is leaving. He places his hand on Ordo's shoulder and wishes him good luck, telling him to stay strong. The secretary thanks Edgar for his words. Meanwhile, the prince begins to ask him to stay a little longer. The commander asks the prince to maintain his composure. He also thanks him for his enthusiasm, but suggests that he stop with this club business. After all, it's not like he likes the Marquise that much. Kane just laughs at the commander's last comment, affirming that he is clearly lying because it's written all over his face that he is totally in love with Marquise Lorelia. Meanwhile, in another location, Leah arrives at her appointment. She spots a man waiting in front of large gates. She approaches the young man, apologizing for her delay. Then we find out that her appointment was with Belforce, her younger brother. Belle tells Leah that he just arrived there and that he still has some time before he has to leave, so it was fine that she was a little late. She responds that she was worried she wouldn't have time to say goodbye. Belle explains that since the Tower of Wizards summoned him out of nowhere, he has the right to take a little time to say goodbye to his sister. Leah smiles and says he was summoned due to his exceptional ability. It's a recognition of his skill, and he should feel proud. She then asks if his research is really about parallel worlds, alternative realities. Belle confirms, saying that the existence of parallel worlds has been confirmed and he is researching it more deeply. After all, a genius like him can't miss out on such revolutionary research. The Marquise gives a nostalgic smile and comments that their parents would be very proud of him. This makes Belle emotional, and his eyes fill with tears. He wipes his tears and tells his sister that he heard about the frequent duels between the battalions. Leah responds that just today she had to resolve another dispute, and she gets irritated because Sir Edgar doesn't take any action regarding this. But that's not all. He seems to be deliberately following her. She complains that he wanted to review all the documents before she submitted them. He also keeps wandering around her jurisdiction as if he is frequently monitoring her. He even prevented her from participating in the special training. This makes our protagonist irritated, thinking that all of this is pure harassment. But in reality, our dear Edgar just wanted an excuse to see Leah and excluded her from the training because she was sick that day, and he was worried. A classic misunderstood romantic. She recalls the moment she confronted him about all this harassment and ended up going a bit too far, which makes her slap her own forehead, and Belle asks if everything is okay. She replies that it's nothing. He enters and remembers that he has something he would like to give her. Belle hands a small round box to his sister, saying it's a gift for his dear sister who sometimes worries too much. Leah looks curiously at the small box, asking if it's a jewelry box. Belle explains that this is not just any jewelry box. Since the Tower of Wizards is quite far from the capital and there are many inspection points between the two places, letters take at least a month to go back and forth. And that's where this little box becomes useful. He named it Belle's Go Talk box. Any letter she puts inside the jewelry box will arrive in a matter of seconds at the other jewelry box that Belle has. Proud of himself, Belle asks his sister if she liked the gift, and she replies that yes. In fact, it's the best thing he has ever done. Teasing her brother a bit, she suggests they change the name of the box to Mailbox. While they are talking, someone approaches. Odor was the one approaching. He addresses Leah, saying that Commander Edgar is urgently calling her to his office. Despite being irritated, Leah says goodbye to her brother, giving him a warm hug and asking him to take care and have a good trip. Belle asks her not to forget to use the jewelry box he gave her. She promises that she won't forget to send letters frequently. Leah goes to meet Commander Edgar, irritated that he always calls her at the worst possible moments. She promises herself that if he calls her for some stupid reason, she will punch him, but then she hears a soft ding. Leah picks up the jewelry box, curious to see if the sound came from it. She opens the box and there is indeed a letter inside. Although she is proud of her brother, she finds it a bit strange that he sent a letter so soon, especially since it has been less than an hour since they said goodbye. But upon reading the letter, Leah is shocked. For the letter was sent by herself, but a Leah from another world, a parallel world. The Leah from the parallel world says that this is letter number 63 that Belle asked her to send, and she hopes that this time the letter finally reaches her. At the end, she signs the letter as Duchess Lorelia von Fariel. This leaves our protagonist confused for a moment since von Fariel is Commander Edgar's last name. But the sound of some people arguing about flowers coming from Edgar's office catches her attention. She approaches curiously, entering through the door that was already ajar. The scene she sees leaves her speechless. Edgar's office is filled with rose petals scattered on the floor and in the center, a romantic heart made of candles. She looks to the side, listening to two people arguing about the best way for the commander to confess. When she comes face to face with Edgar, who also seems confused to be there, she remembers the signature on the letter and feels embarrassed realizing that her other dimensional self is married to Edgar. Causing her cheeks to flush with embarrassment, Leah returns from her thoughts, giving a small jump of fright. Then she turns and looks at the letter desperately, trying to convince herself that the letter is just a prank from Belle. She rereads the letter, hoping that she might see something different. But the handwriting on the letter is clearly hers, so the content of the letter is practically undeniable. Seeing Leah having all these strange reactions, Edgar asks if she is okay. Irritated, she flings the office door open, asking him what the hell all of this is. Edgar puts his hand to his forehead, frustrated, trying to disguise it, says that it is nothing, while mentally cursing the members of the DML fan club. How is it nothing? Can't you see all of this? Leah says incredulously. But Edgar simply repeats that it is nothing she should worry about. Leah starts to get a little irritated with the whole situation and says that unlike him, she doesn't have all this free time to waste. So he shouldn't keep calling her unnecessarily, especially not to call her to help with his love problems. After saying this, she begins to withdraw, but not before giving one last jab at Edgar, advising him that he would look much better if he proposed on his own instead of sending his soldiers to meddle in this matter. And after that, she leaves, stomping on the floor. Edgar watches a little worried as Leah walks away when the prince suddenly appears out of nowhere, commenting that it seems this operation was also a failure. Noticing the prince's presence, Edgar asks what he meant by that. The prince begins to explain, but the irritated commander interrupts him, saying that he was referring to what Kane wanted to say about the operation. Kane looks a bit startled by the surprisingly rude tone of the commander. The commander stands firm, questioning the prince if all of this was his idea, and he replies that yes. He explains that his plan was to make Edgar invite the Marchioness to dinner, and he wanted it to seem natural, which is why he ended up calling both of them to the same place. The commander retorts that it was more of a natural way to destroy a relationship. The prince, trying to appear innocent, apologizes, saying that he thought the Marchioness would like it. Edgar warns him that trying to seem innocent won't work with him. Angry, Kane shouts, asking what Edgar sees in such a rude woman like her. Nothing. Edgar replies without even blinking. This surprises the prince. But the commander quickly explains that there are many things he likes about the Marchioness, but he will only mention one thing he likes about her. She is very charming and attractive. He clears his throat, trying to compose himself. then says that the prince really needs to stop with these unnecessary actions, since what he did could have affected the relations between the two battalions. Kane whines curiously to know what exactly he saw in her. Meanwhile, later that day, Leah stares at the small jewelry box that Belle gave her earlier, until a new ding sounds, and she quickly opens the box. In the letter, Leah from another dimension explains that she is happy to have received a response from her and that it was not a prank from her younger brother, and that no matter how hard it is to believe, it is really true, and that from what she said, if Belle from her world just went out to do his research, then she must now know that parallel worlds and realities exist, and that for her, Belle went out to do his research approximately 5 years ago. So it seems that the timeline between the parallel worlds is not exactly the same. But for her to truly believe all of this, the Leah from the other dimension says she will prove it. And then she writes a phrase that only Leah knows and would understand, which leaves our protagonist in shock. Convinced that the content of the letter is true, she begins to think if perhaps she should warn Belle about this, but decides that it might be better to talk to him in person soon. The Marquise then decides to write a new response letter. In her letter, she says that she believes parallel worlds exist and that she is very proud of her brother's invention. Then she asks if it is really true that she actually married Duke Fariel in that dimension. She confirms that it is true and says that he really makes her very happy. Then she asks about Edgar from the other world. Afterwards, she asks to know what his favorite food is, commenting that her beloved always says that everything she prepares is delicious. Leah shudders at the cute way her other dimensional self refers to the commander. The Leah from the other reality curiously questions our protagonist about how she became a Marquise. If she took the title temporarily because Terry is still very young, or perhaps it would be because her father, in that dimension, had been more seriously injured by the one responsible for the carriage incident, which forced him to step away from the position. Upon reading this, Leah quickly gets up from her chair in total despair and shock. She thought that her parents' death had been a simple accident, but it seems she was wrong. The letter continues by saying that if that were the case, Leah should go after the culprit because in her dimension she did not, and that was her greatest regret. The next morning, Leah wakes up with her eyes so swollen that she can barely open them. One of her maids helps her try to reduce the swelling by placing an ice pack on it, while Leah tries to say that she wasn't crying, but that it was just a simple swelling. The maid responds that regardless of the reason, if she goes out like this on the street, people will start gossiping that she is a crybaby. Leah thanks her maid for her concern, and we find out that the maid was actually her nanny, so the two are quite close, which is why she asks if nothing really happened yesterday. Leah then remembers the letters she exchanged yesterday with her other dimensional self. She feels sad and at the same time happy to know that the baby her mother was expecting was actually a boy, and that in the parallel world he was born well and healthy and was named Terry. Furthermore, he was being trained to become the next Marquis, which is why her other self from the parallel world never had to fight for the title of Marquise and managed to marry. Her parents in that parallel reality were still alive. This was good to know, but at the same time sad, because unfortunately, in her reality, her parents were no longer in that world. But this also made her think a lot about why this was. Was it only in her reality that her parents were gone because of an accident? Or was someone really behind the accident that took her parents? But why would someone do that? Even when she asked Leah from the parallel world about it, she couldn't provide any details about it. She decides not to rush. First, she must investigate the incident better, and the person responsible for investigating this is Sir Edgar. She is not sure if he would let her accompany the investigation, but she believes she should at least try to ask to see the case files. Her nanny quickly places the ice back under the young lady's eyes. She gives Leah a little scolding, saying that she already warned her that she needs to leave the ice on that spot longer, and that she is very worried about the young lady because she always tries to handle everything on her own, and that she should share her fates and, moreover, worry less and enjoy life a little. Taking the cue, the nanny says she heard about a new pastry shop that opened recently and is quite popular among young people. That Leah should take advantage of the clear and sunny day to go out for a bit, take a walk, and eat some delicious sweets. Leah thanks her dear nanny for her concern and care. But then the maid comments that she should take some sweets to the Fariel mansion. This surprises Leah, who questions her nanny why she would take sweets to Sir Edgar. The nanny explains that she was saying that the lady should send sweets to the widowed duchess since she had invited the lady for afternoon tea, not her son. Leah feels more relieved upon hearing this, and the nanny asks her to get ready to go. The Marchioness begins to question whether she really needs to get ready to go out, but the nanny insists that she should hurry up and go, because that way she can have time to stop by the cafe before going to work. Leah agrees and says she will go to the cafe, but that her weakness for sweets must be kept a secret at all costs. Upon arriving at the Fluffaliciode cafe, Leah is greeted by two very cheerful attendants. She looks around and gets excited to see the amount of sweets and how well the place is prepared. But all that highly cute atmosphere intimidates her a bit and makes her question whether she should leave. Two young women sitting there having coffee see Leah and excitedly comment on how beautiful the Marchioness is. Leah approaches the counter, and a young woman who works there quickly recognizes her. She says it is a great honor to welcome the Marchioness to the shop, and then she starts to show Leah the shop's most famous sweets. Starting with the dessert that has become the shop's trademark called Heavens, What a Strawberry. The next one is Chocolate Chaser, famous for its whipped cream. So delicious it seemed almost illegal. The last dessert among the most famous is a combination of creamy cheese and lemon, called the cheese that loved lemon. The young attendant asks what the Marchioness thinks of these options, but explains that those are the most popular. Besides those, there are 345 more options, and if she wants, she could talk about all the options. But Leah thanks her and declines to hear about all 345 other desserts. Leah looks back at the display of sweets, thinking about which one she should try, when the ladies sitting there start commenting about the Marchioness. Impressed to see that despite her social position and status, the Marchioness seems to enjoy simple things like sweets, but they can't imagine a knight eating sweets. It's easier to picture such people eating meats or drinking strong drinks, but sweets are a novelty. Leah feels a bit embarrassed upon hearing the young women's comments until one of them comments that, in the end, the Marchioness is just a woman. And maybe that's why she has different tastes from knights and enjoys desserts. This makes Leah remember all the criticisms she heard when trying to maintain the title of Marchioness in the family, how men said she shouldn't receive the title, about how a woman could be a knight with such a fragile and weak body, and many other atrocities. The attendant calls for the Marchioness as she suddenly fell silent. This brings Leah back from her thoughts. She tells the attendant that the sweets are a gift and that she herself won't be eating any. She then asks the attendant to choose the desserts for her since she is not very used to eating sweets. The attendant asks for a moment to choose the desserts, and the young women there comment that maybe they misunderstood the Marchioness, and that in reality, she seems not to like sweets at all. They start laughing, saying that now everything makes sense. After all, this was expected of a knight. I felt sorry for our protagonist having to hide who she really is out of insecurity. She sighs, frustrated, thinking that this had been unworthy of her position and that she still had a long way to go. At that moment, the attendant announces that her desserts are ready. Leah sees the cute delivery boxes and wonders how she will walk around with such pretty boxes. She thanks the attendant and quickly leaves the shop. On her way to work, she thinks that even if the desserts from that place are very good, she never intends to return there. And in the distance, two members of the 1st Battalion observe Leah. One of them comments that it seems Commander Lorelia likes sweets and desserts, while the other says that maybe she only likes coffee. The first then says that she probably likes both things, so the other man says that's probably it, and asks if they can leave now that they've discovered this. The first says they can as soon as he manages to move because they've been standing there spying on the commander for so long that his legs are cramping. The scene cuts to a young woman with beautiful pink hair very happily saying that the cheesecakes are delicious and thanking the Marchioness for bringing desserts for her. The Marchioness then says that actually she should be the one to thank since the young woman always finds time to have tea with her. But the young woman insists that it's nothing, and that she is the one who should be grateful. The young woman then makes a slightly sad expression and says that, despite being the crown princess, the prince rarely visits her. She also comments that, in her home country, she was treated like a princess. But here, sometimes, she feels like just a hostage. It's as if it's natural for everyone to ignore her. Even the previous knights assigned to protect her never visited her even once. But unlike them, Leah comes to visit her every day, and she has no idea how happy that makes her feel. Leah makes a slightly worried expression upon hearing this from the princess. The princess laughs a little awkwardly and comments that she ruined the mood again. She then changes the subject and asks if the Marchioness is going to Lady Anne's tea today, and Leah replies that she intends to go as soon as she finishes her duties for the day. The princess then asks if she will be wearing a dress, and the Marchioness says yes because her maid insisted that she wear one. Curious, the princess asks what kind of dress she intends to wear for the event, and Leah says she might wear the same one she wore at the crown prince's birthday party the previous year. At the same time, the princess smiles and says she hopes the Marchioness doesn't wear the same dress she wore at the Crown Prince's party. They then realize they were talking about the same dress at the same time and fall silent for a minute, processing the information. Until the princess abruptly stands up, questioning why the Marchioness hasn't thrown that dress in the trash yet and asking her to never wear that dress again. The princess sighs upon realizing that the Marchioness has no idea how horrible that dress was. Determined, the princess then says she will have to take matters into her own hands if she wants her friend to be okay, so she asks the Marchioness to trust her. Leah is lost. She doesn't understand why the princess is asking the Marchioness to trust her. Meanwhile, in the same garden, we see the Crown Prince and Commander Edgar walking as Edgar questions why Kane is following him. Smiling playfully, the prince simply replies that he believes it will be interesting. Edgar looks a bit angry at the prince, questioning if he thinks that him going to apologize is something interesting. After all of this is the Crown Prince's fault, since he and the strange fan club made a huge mess and irritated Commander Lorelia. Kane shrinks a little and says that if he thinks about the positive side of things, at least now Edgar has one more reason to meet the Marchioness. But Edgar shouts that this is not a pleasant reason to meet the Marchioness. Getting even more irritated, he asks the prince if any of his operations have ever worked. The prince asks the commander to calm down and reminds him that he is the Crown Prince. Realizing that this time Edgar is really angry, the prince and his secretary run away, saying they should talk later. Edgar sighs, becoming a little calmer and saying in vain for the prince not to run because he might end up getting hurt. He then starts looking for Commander Lorelia now that he is finally alone. While deep in thought, he remembers that he didn't find the Marchioness in his office, so she must be in the gardens. He spots a young woman in the garden wearing a beautiful light blue dress. He assumes it must be the Crown Princess. Politely, he greets Princess Michelle and says that if she could give him a minute of her attention, he would like to ask her something. He then starts to ask if she has seen the commander, but the young woman turns in his direction, causing him to stop mid-question. He is mesmerized upon realizing that she is actually Commander Lorelia, and Leah is also surprised to see Edgar. The two look at each other for a few seconds, until Leah starts to explain somewhat awkwardly that the princess lent her the dress she is wearing, because she had been invited to his mother's tea party, so she will be wearing the borrowed dress. Still embarrassed, she continues trying to explain until Edgar reaches out his hand towards her face. He gently touches her face, asking if, by any chance, she has been crying recently, leaving her speechless for a minute, but then she regains her composure from the surprise and slaps Edgar's hand, complaining about how he dares to touch her face so casually. He, awkward and surprised by her reaction, quickly apologizes until a voice interrupts him, saying that the dress looks very good on the Marchioness. Jean approaches the two, continuing his speech by saying that this kind of thing suits the Marchioness perfectly. The two commanders politely greet Archduke Jean. He returns the greeting and turns back to address Lorelia, asking what kind of occasion demands such dresses and ornaments, especially during her working hours. Edgar, clearly noticing Jean's probing, tries to respond, but Leah is quicker and politely says that this is none of the Archduke's business. Lorelia explains that it is her duty to assist Princess Michelle, and as long as her clothes do not interfere with her functions, she has the right to wear whatever she wants. Moreover, she had already requested to leave early today, so she is no longer on duty. For this reason, she asks him to avoid showing excessive intimacy or curiosity. Kane appears out of nowhere behind Commander Edgar, commenting that the Marchioness never disappoints. He then asks Jean what he is doing in that sacred place. Jean retorts in a passive-aggressive tone, asking if he, by any chance, does not have permission to enter that sacred palace. He then adds that he is not obligated to keep the prince informed about all his matters. In response, the prince simply comments that he understands, tells him to take care of his own business, and go on his way while questioning why he would be so interested in their affairs. The atmosphere between the two becomes tense. Jean firmly counters the prince, saying that he hasn't even started asking questions to Commander Lorelia yet. The prince, in turn, responds authoritatively, making it clear that he prefers the Archduke not to question anyone. The prince then addresses the two commanders and suggests that they finish their work for today. And since Lorelia would already be going to the Fangirl mansion, he proposes that Edgar accompany her there. Surprised, Leah tries to refuse, saying that it's fine and that there is no need for that. But Kane insists that it is in order, especially since it would be strange if both used different carriages to go the same way. The prince quickly whispers to Edgar that if they decide to visit a cafe on the way, they should choose Fluffalicious, as he heard that Commander Lorelia likes it there. He then reinforces with slight authority that they should go soon. After all, he had already prepared a carriage for the two, and he would like to finish his conversation with Archduke Jean in private. Leah tries to say again that she doesn't need company, but Kane simply ignores her. Kane bids farewell to the two, telling them to go safely and to use the carriage he prepared. Jean, hearing the prince call Commander Edgar Eddie, comments that it is unfortunate that he still calls Sir Edgar by that nickname. After all, he should take into account his political position and age. Kane counters the comment by saying that Jean is just jealous, but that if he had been informed, he would have continued to call him Jeannie. Jean, irritated, loses his patience and warns him not to call him that. Kane, now with a more serious expression, puts his hand on Jean's shoulder. And still calling him Jeannie, says that he is holding back out of consideration for the old times. The prince approaches Jean, looking him in the eye, and warns him not to overstep his boundaries. Meanwhile, in the carriage prepared by the prince, Edgar and Lorelia are sitting quite close to each other due to the carriage being rather small. Leah mentally wonders if she will really have to stay like this for 30 minutes. With the swaying of the carriage, they end up bumping into each other even more. She complains in her thoughts, asking if the Empire's finances were really that bad to use such small transportation. Meanwhile, he realizes, embarrassed, that his knees are touching hers. Edgar breaks the silence, saying that although the trip is a bit uncomfortable, they will soon reach their destination, and asks her to be a little patient. Leah simply says that it's fine. Uncomfortable. Thinking that his tone came out a bit ruder than he intended, Edgar remembers that he still needs to apologize for the recent incident. He comments to the commander that he has something to tell her. She looks at him curiously while he remains silent for a few seconds, gathering the courage to speak. Still a bit embarrassed, he apologizes to her. Leah looks surprised upon hearing Edgar's apologies. He speaks sincerely, saying that he believes there have been some misunderstandings between them. He then apologizes for everything that has happened so far and adds that, if nothing else, he would like her to at least know one thing. He then confesses that he deeply respects her. At that moment, Leah remembers something her other dimensional self said, that her beloved Edgar is always attentive, concerned about ensuring that she never feels uncomfortable, and that he always worries, perhaps too much, about the possibility that she might feel, even if minimally, offended. I admire you, Commander Lorelia, says Edgar, a bit embarrassed. Leah is very surprised to hear this. Him admiring her? She never imagined she would hear something like that coming from him. We are teleported to the past, exactly 3 years ago, to the day when Edgar formally introduced Lorelia as the commander of the 2nd Battalion, in front of the entire battalion. He tells everyone that she will be the leader of the Red Wolves, so everyone must be polite and respect her. And quickly murmurs begin to arise among the battalion members, questioning why a woman would be their leader and that it was ridiculous. And the vice commander comments that having a woman commander was the worst thing that could happen to them. Edgar, hearing that, starts to scold the knights, but Leah interrupts him. She asks permission from Edgar and begins to walk towards the knights while drawing her sword, saying that it's time to find out who the real weaklings are. With the sword in hand and a confident look, she invites the knights to duel with her. Soon after, she makes a quick lunge, launching herself towards the vice commander and attacking, but stopping her sword inches before hitting him. Startling the man who is completely unprepared for that, she then turns to Edgar while commenting that she doesn't care if everyone decides to attack her at the same time. But to her surprise, Edgar seems to have a rather irritated expression. Remembering this, she mentally questions whether he really respects her, concluding that this is clearly a lie. After all, he has laughed at her from the beginning. Returning to the present, after recalling that past event, she tells herself not to be so easily fooled by a handsome face. Then she asks if he really just said that he respects her, and he confirms that he did. She is a bit speechless at such an honest and straightforward answer, and stammers a bit. Then she says that it's okay almost automatically, quickly trying to correct herself by saying thank you very much. Edgar lets out a small laugh at the situation and then says that he is the one who should be grateful. Leah is impressed by Edgar's beautiful expression, surprised that he could show such an expression. Remembering something, she seizes the moment and tells him that she has something she would like to ask him. She says that she believes he is the one responsible for the case of her parents' accident. So she knows that her request might be difficult, but she would like to see the files related to the accident. And that although she does not doubt the commander's abilities, and that it is a bit rude to ask to review a case that has already been closed, she admits that she only avoided the subject because of the mourning. But she really would like to look at her parents' accident case at least once. Leah, looking down, apologizes for the request, but at the same time begs him to let her look. Edgar brings his hand closer to hers, saying that he understands and that he has also been thinking a bit about the case and that it would be good for her to know a little more about the accident. So there is no reason for her to apologize. He concludes with a supportive smile on his face. Leah is once again impressed by Edgar's expression, but thanks him. She observes him again, for a moment, wondering why that expression seems so familiar to her. The duo finally arrives at the Ferial mansion. The Widow Duchess Anne von Ferial apologizes to the Marchioness de Ville, explaining that, unfortunately, the tea party has been cancelled. She adds that she did send a notice to the mansion, but she believes that, for some reason, the Marchioness ended up not seeing the message. Leah tells the Duchess that it's all right, and that she brought some desserts and will leave them with the attendant and take her leave. Leah responds to the Duchess kindly, saying that it's all right. She explains that she brought some desserts and that she will leave them with the attendant before taking her leave. Then she thanks Sir Edgar for accompanying her there. He replies that it was no problem at all and apologizes for making her go there for nothing. He then changes the subject and asks if she would like to review the matters they had discussed in the carriage while they are on duty the next day. Excited, Leah says she would love to do that tomorrow, and then she starts to withdraw. But the Duchess asks her to wait. She apologizes for making the Marchioness come all the way there for nothing, and to make up for the inconvenience, offers her second son to serve as the Marchioness's companion. Edgar is surprised by his mother's suggestion, while the Duchess asks Lloyd to come closer and greet the guests. A handsome young man with light hair and green eyes casually approaches, saying hello to the Marchioness and her older brother. Leah is surprised, realizing that the Duchess clearly orchestrated all of this as an attempt to arrange a marriage for her youngest son. Soon after, she tries to calm herself, remembering that what the Duchess is doing is reasonable since she is of marrying age. Lloyd extends his hand towards Lorelia. She hesitates for a second, but then thinks that the second son of a duke is even more than he deserves. Leah then bows, thanking the Duchess. She then extends her hand to accept Lloyd's invitation. Edgar, who is watching everything in panic, grabs Leah's wrist before she can touch his brother's hand. He turns to his brother, saying that he is sorry, but that is not going to happen, leaving Lloyd and his mother completely perplexed. Edgar then asks the commander if it is all right with her. He would like to spend this time with her instead of his brother. However, what just happened was clearly a proposal for Edgar's brother to court her, so when Edgar asks to take his place, Leah is even more surprised by the whole situation. Realizing what he just suggested, Edgar tries to explain himself, saying that he just thought it would be a good idea to look over the case papers earlier. Leah looks towards the Duchess, questioning if it is all right for her to accept the invitation. But Edgar smiles, responding that, of course it is. Seeing the Duke's smile, Leah finally realizes something, that she might now understand what that smile means. The same one she saw 3 years ago. From the beginning, he was never laughing at her. Perhaps she misunderstood before, and that smile means he admires her? Maybe. But if he is not laughing at her, then does he admire her? But what exactly does that mean? As Leah gets lost in her thoughts, Edgar bows to his mother and brother, asking if it is all right for him to step away to resolve a few things with the Marchioness. Lloyd quickly affirms that it is fine. And to be honest, despite being honored to accompany the Duchess, he is starting to feel bad for his future fiancée. The widowed Duchess says that it is all right. After all, if it is part of their work, she has no right to question it, but she hopes her son only does his job and nothing more than that. Embarrassed, Edgar replies that yes, and asks for permission to leave. The two then politely say goodbye to Edgar's family. As they leave, Leah asks if they are going to Edgar's office because she would like to change clothes, but Edgar says that would take quite a bit of time, so it would be better to go straight there, especially since there is a place he would like to visit with her. Curious, Leah asks what that place would be. Meanwhile, the widowed Duchess watches thoughtfully the interaction between the two. The scene cuts to Edgar and Lorelia already reviewing the documents, but Leah does not seem very happy. Mentally, she says that although she is glad to see the documents so quickly, she does not understand why Edgar chose the cafe of all possible places to do this. Edgar looks at Leah, saying that he only brought the most pertinent documents to the case, but if she wants to see any others, she can ask. Noticing the commander's uncomfortable expression, he questions if something is bothering her. Meanwhile, all the young ladies in the place seem to be paying attention to them. Leah asks almost in a whisper why they came to this cafe. Edgar simply says that someone recommended the place to him. Lorelia respectfully explains that a man and a woman going to a place like this together can be easily misinterpreted. And besides, that place does not seem suitable for a meeting about government matters. Whispering even lower, she also comments that to make matters worse, the attendants at that place are somewhat oppressive. As soon as she says this, the attendant who is approaching asks what they would like to order, and Edgar asks the attendant to give him a minute. He then tells Leah that if she is uncomfortable, they can go somewhere else. But he says this still in front of the attendant. So Leah, feeling awkward, quickly grabs the menu and says that it's all right because she likes that place and that she loves all the desserts there, so he can choose whatever he wants. The attendant gets excited to hear this and says that it is an honor to serve the commanders. She then starts to explain again about the desserts of the place. When she talks about the chocolate dessert with whipped cream, the Marquise's eyes light up. But she realizes that she is getting too excited and tells Edgar that he can choose whatever he wants for them to eat. But he, perceptive, says that he would like the last dessert that the attendant just mentioned. She questions if he is referring to the Peach Pitch Lovely Peach, but he says no and yes to the one before that. Excitedly, she says that she understands. A little flushed, Edgar confirms that it is the chocolate stalker with whipped cream, and the attendant says she will bring the order right away. Leah lightly teases him, commenting that apparently he likes chocolate. He, with a firm tone despite still being embarrassed, retorts by asking if he doesn't have the right to like chocolate. She says that of course he can like chocolate and lets out a small laugh. Edgar asks her not to laugh at him, and she apologizes while still chuckling lightly. After this little cute scene, they continue analyzing the documents, until Leah notices something strange related to the horse and comments to Edgar, who asks what she found. She says that according to the document, the horse involved in the accident was black, with white hairs above its 4 hooves. She then questions if this information is correct. He confirms that the information is correct, explaining that he remembers well because he saw the horse in person. She clenches her fist, surprised, and thinks that this cannot be right. She recalls that the horse that left that day was black, but only 3 of its hooves had white hairs above them. She is sure of this because her parents were especially attached to that horse. Could it be that her parents were really murdered? She questions herself mentally. But if this is true, she will have to ask Edgar to reopen the case and reinvestigate a case that is already several years old. She begins to ask the commander about this, but before she can ask, Edgar says her name. And he says that he would like to first apologize for his insufficient investigation because he was clearly negligent. However, he continues, and Leah mentally becomes sad, imagining that he will say that he cannot reinvestigate. But to her surprise, he asks if, should he correct his own mistake, she would be able to forgive him. Surprised and a little nervous, Leah hurriedly replies that, of course, she would forgive him. Soon after, she stumbles over her words and confesses that, in fact, it is she who should be asking him for a favor. She thanks him for that, but he says that she doesn't need to thank him, because in fact, he should be thanking her for giving him the chance to correct a mistake. And with those words, he again makes that expression that has been bothering her all day, a feeling that is at the same time unknown and incredibly familiar to her. She then finally realizes why that expression seems so familiar to her. It was the same one her father made when he looked at her mother. Meanwhile, Edgar is talking about what they should start the reinvestigation by checking the horse, but Leah interrupts him. He says that he has to ask her something first. And even without knowing exactly why, she decides to say this. She comments that he must know that conducting a reinvestigation of the case could end up negatively affecting his reputation. Edgar confidently replies that he knows that. She then continues and asks why he is willing to help her if he knows it could be bad for him. Admiration is really all he feels for me in his heart? Leah asks. Silence takes over the place after she asks this. The two look at each other for a few seconds, and Edgar has a surprised expression, until he breaks the silence by saying that it is not exactly admiration. He reflects that if he reopens the carriage case, he will certainly be reprimanded, since he was responsible for the previous investigation. Moreover, he comments that gathering a team to conduct a new investigation will also be something difficult. But even so, he would like to correct his mistake, even if it is a little late. He clenches his hands tightly and explains that the former Marquis and his wife were old friends of his mother and had always been extremely kind to him. If there is any sign of injustice involved in the deaths of the former Marquis and his wife, as the one responsible for the previous investigation, he feels he must take responsibility and correct his mistakes. He looks determinedly at Lorelia, sincerely apologizes, and asks her to please give him the chance to do what is right. The sincerity in Edgar's words catches our protagonist by surprise. She becomes visibly emotional, her eyes misty and her face flushed. Some tears begin to roll down her face as she shrinks away, trying to hide her weakness. But even while emotional, she thanks Edgar. Shortly after, she apologizes and asks if it would be all right for her to leave. And he, surprised by her reaction, responds that of course she can go. She stands up asking for permission and begins to withdraw, while he, still in shock, just watches her. But before leaving, she stops for a moment and, trying to hold back her tears, says, "Thank you, really." With that, she leaves, leaving Edgar there deep in thought. He says her name out loud, but to himself, when out of nowhere someone appears behind him asking if he just got rejected. Prince Kane, who was apparently disguised and observing everything, corrects his statement by saying that it actually seems more like she rejected him. Edgar, confused, asks what His Majesty is doing there. Kane just gives an awkward laugh and asks Edgar to sit down. After sitting down, Edgar questions whether the mustache the prince is wearing is meant to be a disguise. Confidently, Kane says yes, the perfect disguise, and quickly changes the subject. He questions whether Edgar really rejected the Marchioness, or did she reject him? The commander then remembers what just happened and how she left crying from there. But he responds to the prince that it was neither of the two options, but that he has told the prince countless times that he does not like the Marchioness in that way. And besides, she is too good for him. Kane asks, curious, what kind of man he thinks would be suitable for the Marchioness, since he doesn't think he deserves her. Edgar reflects for a moment and responds that, above all, she is the only woman with the title of Marchioness in the entire empire, in addition to being the commander of the 2nd Battalion of Knights and the 4th Aura user. Therefore, the man who stands by her side needs to be as perfect as she is. He continues explaining that, since the man would be marrying into her family and not the other way around, it would be better if he held a position slightly inferior to hers. Furthermore, since he would not inherit the title from his own family, it would be ideal for him to be the second son, not the firstborn. Finally, he adds that to truly understand the Marchioness, the candidate would need to know how to wield a sword, so it would be good if he were a knight, or at least an apprentice. Before Edgar can continue speaking, the prince interrupts him, asking if he would really be okay if the Marchioness married someone else. Edgar hesitates for a few seconds and says that of course he would be okay with that. But despite saying one thing, his actions and body say another, as he nearly destroys the table by clenching his fist. The prince then decides to provoke him, saying that he knows someone who would fit perfectly into the criteria that the Duke just mentioned. The youngest member of the DML fan club, Sir Peppy, the second son of the Viscount and also a knight, once said he would leave the fan club to become the Marchioness's husband. Sir Peppy repeats Edgar, opening another crack in the table with his fist. He then remembers how Peppy is. Edgar lets out a long sigh and then comments that if that was an attempt to make him jealous, Kane should give up, because nothing would happen anyway. Furious, the prince slams his hand on the table and retorts, asking if the problem is because of the titles, and agitated, says he will do whatever it takes, even create a system of double titles if necessary. Edgar says, a bit frustrated, that this is not the problem. Still agitated, Kane questions whether that is not what it would be. Is he worried about what people might say about them together? Edgar speaks very softly the reason. The prince, unable to hear, asks him to repeat what he said, but Edgar kind of murmurs again. For the second time, the prince asks him to repeat, and a bit irritated, Edgar says loudly that the reason is that Commander Lorelia hates him, and the situation becomes temporarily a bit awkward. Regaining his composure, Kane cheerfully tells Edgar that it's okay, and he just needs to work hard from now on, and everything will be fine. Disbelieving, Edgar asks, how exactly things will be fine? Kane smiles while thoughtfully saying that there is a way for everything. The scene cuts to the DeVille mansion. Lorelia, who has already arrived home, is pensive while training with her sword. She ponders who might have reasons to want to eliminate her parents, and if there is something she is overlooking. When a different horse was brought? Who was driving the carriage? And the most complicated part of all this, what will she say to Belle? Leah strikes the air forcefully with her aura, a bit frustrated and worried. She breathes a little heavily from exhaustion, when suddenly one of her maids comes running, calling for her. The woman apologizes for interrupting the training, and Leah says it's all right, and asks what is happening. Responding, the maid says that recently Duke Fariel came to deliver a gift for the lady. Leah is surprised, and the woman extends a tall black box in her direction, continuing to explain that the gift box is a bit exotic. Lorelia takes the box, worried about the fact that the Duke came personally to deliver it. She takes the box and goes to her room and stares at the box for a few seconds, trying to understand what Commander Edgar is planning. Leah reflects, confused, wondering if he really showed up out of nowhere just to bring her a gift. Suddenly, her eyes widen in shock at the thought that it could be a bomb. She starts to recall Edgar's recent behavior. His apology was too sudden, and the moment he asked for the chocolate cake seemed to be done in consideration for her. Could it be that everything he did was to deceive her? But then she remembers better the sincerity of his words earlier and realizes that she is just being silly and a bit paranoid. With that, she decides to open the box. And the box is filled with flowers. A beautiful bouquet sent to her, like a sweet apology. The small jewelry box makes a soft ding on the table. Leah looks curiously, imagining it to be yet another letter from her other dimensional self. She pushes the bouquet aside and opens the box. In the letter, the Leah from the other dimension tells that Edgar gave her flowers, but not just a bouquet. Actually, a carriage full of flowers. A carriage full of flowers is a bit of an exaggeration, so perhaps our protagonist should be happy that her Edgar only gave her a box. The letter continues, and the Leah from the other dimension mentions that she found that amount of flowers absurd, so she asked her husband why he gave her so many flowers, and he replied that when he went to buy, he wanted to buy flowers that symbolized love. And in the end, he ended up buying a bunch of flowers. In the end, she says she ended up exchanging all the flowers in the mansion for the new flowers her husband bought her. The letter made Leah think of something. She pulls a cord, making a bell ring, calling one of her maids. Promptly, her maid comes to the room and enters, asking how she can be of help, if perhaps the lady would like a hot tea, as she had recently caught a cold. Leah replies no, as she is feeling well, but asks if by any chance she knows what kind of flowers those are, and then shows the bouquet she received from Edgar. The maid says those flowers are enities, and they are precious flowers that grow in the desert. Leah asks if she knows what enities mean in the language of flowers. The woman replies that they mean, "I want to comfort you." Upon hearing the meaning, Leah's cheeks flush, and she is surprised. Then she gives a beautiful smile, thinking about how thoughtful and sweet Edgar's gesture was. Meanwhile, in Edgar's office, Vice Commander Daikon says wearily that they have already reviewed all the documents related to the carriage accident case. Edgar, who is sitting at the other table also looking at documents, praises Daikon for the good work. He then tells Daikon that he can go, but that he will review all the documents again. Daikon, worried, asks the commander why he is working so hard, and comments that in the last 3 days, Edgar has slept a total of 4 hours. He continues, saying that love is important, but if he keeps working in a frantic way, he will end up getting sick or worse. Irritated, Edgar says he already warned that the reason for the investigation has nothing to do with love. The vice commander sighs, telling Edgar not to give up. After all, he only sent her a bouquet. Speaking of bouquets, Daikon questions the choice of color for the box, as he finds it a bit morbid to send flowers in a black box. Edgar says that he chose the color of the box based on Lorelia's preferences. But we all know that it was actually Prince Kane who commented that Leah likes black. It seems that the commander is really starting to believe in the members of the DML club. Daikon says that the commander should stop going around in circles and just tell the Marchioness how he feels about her. Edgar becomes serious and asks the vice commander if he has any idea how many women in the Empire can maintain their titles on their own. Daikon, not understanding, replies that the commander of the 2nd Battalion is the only one. Then Edgar asks if he knows why that is. And Daikon says it's because it's something very difficult to do. And the commander confirms Daikon's answer, saying that Commander Lorelia worked very hard to get to where she is. And even so, few recognize how heavy the burden she carries is. That's why he could never ask her to give up everything and become a duchess. He would never want to be just another burden for her. So he concludes that supporting her from a distance would at least be a way to show the respect and consideration she deserves. Daikon thinks a little about what Edgar just said, and then he apologizes to the commander. Leah opens the door, asking if Edgar has a minute. She enters the office, saying that she was informed that the horse's carcass is ready for inspection, so if he is free. Leah stops speaking upon noticing Edgar's tired expression, then says that if he is too tired, she can go check it alone. He quickly stands up, saying that they can go together. But because of his fatigue, he ends up tripping and starts to fall. Leah, noticing this, rushes towards him and grabs the commander, practically hugging him to prevent him from falling. Edgar's heart races with Leah's embrace, and he just looks at her in surprise, completely speechless. I love the expressions that Edgar makes. They are so sincere and adorable. She asks if he is okay. Edgar, even redder than a pepper, replies that he is fine. And he quickly looks away, trying to compose himself. Although he says he is fine, Leah, seeing how red his face is, says that she should go there on her own. But Edgar insists that he is fine and tells them to go before it gets later. Out of nowhere, the door bursts open as one of the soldiers falls. The man quickly recovers from the fall with a roll, and in the blink of an eye, he is kneeling in front of the Marchioness while holding her hand. He smiles at her, saying hello. We find out that this is all part of another operation of the DML Club, as Kane is watching everything from a distance while giving instructions to the man. Probably a plan from the prince to stir jealousy in Edgar. And the plan seems to work because as soon as he sees the man holding Leah's hand, he remembers what the prince told him earlier about the Viscount's son, Sir Peppy, being a good match for the Marchioness. And he is completely overtaken by anger and jealousy, and the poor man, sensing the threatening aura of Commander Edgar, quickly apologizes to the commander, but Leah, not realizing what is happening, thinks it is directed at her. And with that, a beautiful confusion is established, with Edgar dying of jealousy, the prince shouting into the communicator for the man to give the cake to the Marchioness, the vice commander angry because of the man's terrible timing, Sir Peppy not knowing what to do, and our protagonist confused in the middle of all this mess. Until the man pulls out a cake from who knows where and hands it to Leah, saying it is a gift. On the other side, the prince shouts that the man forgot to mention it was a gift from Sir Edgar, to which Peppy simply responds, "Oops." A little later, on the way to investigate the horse, Leah comments that she never imagined Sir Peppy would give her a dessert like that in person. Even so, she says she liked the gesture and believes he must have done it to apologize for getting into a fight with the soldiers of the 2nd Battalion. And Edgar, clearly still irritated, just agrees. The man who is guiding them to the location warns that the grave is just ahead. He comments that he thought a lot about where to bury the horse, as the Marquis loved that horse in particular. Leah becomes a bit thoughtful and sad upon hearing about her father. And Edgar, noticing this, says that he can investigate the horse alone if she prefers. But Leah assures him that everything is fine. The man in front lets out a startled shout upon looking at the grave, questioning what that is. He starts to stutter, incredulous and scared. Leah approaches quickly to look and perhaps try to understand what is happening and is also startled by what she sees. The skeleton has a strange shape and is very different from a horse. The employee, still incredulous, says he is sure he buried the Marquise's horse in that location. Edgar, who had also approached, confirms that those are definitely not the bones of a horse. Leah says those are the bones of a chimera. She is sure of this because of Belle. He had shown her the bones of a chimera several times. Mentally, she knows that this only confirms one thing. And with a face of anger while tears run down her cheeks, she tells Edgar she is 100% sure that those are not horse bones. But mentally, she knows that this confirms that her country was indeed murdered. Edgar watches her, worried and surprised by the change in her expression. It's almost as if she already suspects something. Realizing the whirlwind of emotions that Leah must be going through at that moment, he clenches his fist and then takes something out of his pocket, a handkerchief that he extends towards Lorelia. Then, with a determined look, he tells her that he swears to become her sword. She looks at him, surprised by the Duke's kind and sincere gesture, realizing that she truly has an ally in him and that everything he has said so far was true. Meanwhile, in the middle of the desert in a simple little house, someone seems to be playing with an animal while a woman reads a book. The man leans against the animal's paw while complimenting it for being a good boy. This seems to catch the woman's attention as she looks in their direction. Then she stomps her foot hard on the ground. She then asks the man, who is named Nex, when they are going to leave that miserable place. Nex responds to the woman, who we find out is named Ignis, asking if that's why she has been so upset. Ignis shrugs and says it's nothing, a little irritated. Nex approaches and holds her hand, saying that whatever she wants, she just needs to tell him. And looking at her in a sickly way, he says he would kill anything for her. Ignis, while stroking Nex's hair, asks how long they will have to wait because of the old man. Nex says that if she doesn't want to wait, they can go right now, because the chimera is ready. And using it, Nex is confident they can destroy all of them at any moment. Is that so? Says the woman as she calls a bird to land on her arm. As the strangely featured animal lands on her arm, she gives a wide smile, affirming that things are getting interesting. Ignis then tells Nex that it seems they have found the chimera's skeleton, And he smiles, saying that this is great since things were getting boring. She stands up and starts walking while laughing a little, and says that it's time to wipe them out. We already know the psychos of the story. That Chimera had the same style as the skeleton, so the question that remains is how did no one notice the difference? The scene returns to our favorite couple. They are in Edgar's office reading documents about the carriage accident case. Leah is very focused, and Edgar watches her with a clearly loving gaze. Suddenly, Leah looks in his direction, asking if he has finished reading the documents, which startles him at the possibility of being caught staring at her. But Leah, without realizing it, goes to take a document from Edgar's hands, and for a moment their hands touch. This makes Edgar suddenly raise his hands, embarrassed, and he ends up throwing several documents into the air. Surprised, Leah asks if he is okay. After all, she comments that he is a little red. Then he leans on his shoulder, asking if he is in pain or discomfort anywhere. This makes Edgar turn even redder, if that were possible. Seeing this, Leah says she will call a doctor, but Edgar says it's not necessary because he is already feeling better. She then starts picking up the scattered documents and says she believes they have already reviewed all the documents, which means they are ready to take action. Leah looks seriously at Edgar, wishing that everything goes well in the meeting so that the reinvestigation is approved, and he says he hopes for the same. During the meeting, some nobles remind the king that the case in question had been closed 3 years ago, and they question what else could possibly come to light after so much time. Another noble agrees with the first and adds that the empire could not afford to waste resources on issues motivated by personal feelings. Another council member adds that the request seemed excessively personal, and allowing something like that would be the same as showing preferential treatment to a knight commander. Leah, indignant, immediately retorts that it would be nothing of the sort, and that regardless of whether 3 or even 5 years have passed since the closure of a case, if there is just cause to reevaluate it, the duty of the empire is to act. She asks them to see her not as a knight commander, but as an ordinary citizen who has suffered deeply from that loss. Before she could finish, Jean coldly interrupts her, saying that a mere citizen would not even be allowed to enter that hall, and that Leah should be aware that she could only make that direct appeal to the council because she is a knight commander. He adds that the formation of reinvestigation teams has always been a lengthy process, requiring time and strict adherence to formal protocols. He also highlights that no previous case has moved so quickly from the reporting phase to the approval phase, concluding that this seems very much like a case of privileged treatment. The meeting becomes more heated as the nobles begin to raise their voices. One of them stands up, firmly stating that he completely agrees. Another adds that if they approve that request, they would certainly be accused of favoritism. Soon, more voices joined in, declaring that this could not, in any way, move forward, and that the king should not approve it. Leah enters a small panic. She feels that she needs to do something because if things continue like this, she will not achieve justice for her parents. Edgar addressed everyone, his firm voice cutting through the murmur of the counselors. He said that even if this could be considered an act of favoritism, it did not change the merit of the request. He reminded everyone that it concerned the late Marquis and Marchioness von Devil, people whose generosity and influence had benefited many present there. He continued by saying that the late Marquis had always been the first to enlist in wars, fighting for the security of the empire without ever hesitating. That he and his wife were the first to open their barns during times of famine, sharing what they had with the people. Many villagers still visited the couple's graves to pay their respects. Indignant, Edgar raised his voice, looking at everyone and questioning whether they really believed that anyone would dare condemn the reopening of the case of the death of the Marquis and Marchioness von Devil, calling it preferential treatment. And even if this means that he would be discredited and have his reputation tarnished for being responsible for the original investigation, he would still like to request the reinvestigation. The nobles murmured among themselves after Edgar's statement. Leah looks surprised at Edgar, still bent toward the king. The king then asks if he can truly take responsibility for those words. Edgar looks determined at the king and says yes. The king stands up and says he will allow the case to be reopened and investigated again. Leah is surprised by the king's words. He continues by saying that the late Marquis von Deville was a precious person to him, and anyone who opposes this decision will be the same as opposing him. Leah thanks the king. Prince Cain smiles at this decision while Jean maintains a serious expression. After the meeting, the commanders along with the prince and his secretary walk down the castle corridor. Relieved, Cain says that the commanders did a good job. He was apprehensive about this meeting because he had already discussed the matter with his father before the meeting, and he seemed unyielding, so he thought he would not authorize the reopening. Leah thanks him and says that this is just the beginning then. But a male voice calls her, interrupting her. She turns toward the voice and sees Archduke Jean, who says he would like to talk to her for a moment. He says he is interested in helping the reinvestigation team. Edgar steps forward and asks what kind of help, but Jean raises his hand toward him and says no, that he would like to speak with Commander Lorelia in private. Leah walks toward Jean while the rest of the group leaves them alone. She asks what he meant by aid. Jean tells her to calm down because he simply came to offer an apology to the commander. Sir Edgar's words in the meeting today made him reflect quite a bit, because all this time she must have suffered a lot. In a tone more like a threat, he continues to say that things must have been very difficult for her since the death of her parents, and he unfortunately contributed to worsening her burden, for which he apologizes. Leah says he doesn't need to apologize and that she is fine. She removes his hand from her shoulder and says she understands the reason for his actions and that it's all right. Even so, he would still like to help the reinvestigation team. He adds that since Belforce is not here at the moment, the team will need a mage. The Archduke reminds her that the Imperial Ministry of Magic is under his jurisdiction, and that, due to the delicate nature of the investigation, she would need someone highly competent. With that, he declared that he would send the Archmage himself to assist her on the mission. Of course, this is if she accepts the proposal, he concludes. He thinks for a minute and then thanks the Archduke, saying he will accept the help. Jean gives a beautiful smile. He then says goodbye to Leah, saying he will notify the ministry about this and ask them to send help as soon as possible. He then stops walking and says there is one more thing he would like her to know, that the late Marquis, her father, was quite dear to him. Leah returns to where Prince Cain and Edgar are, and the prince anxiously asks if she is okay. He starts to analyze her while asking if she is still intact and 100% or if she was bitten somewhere or offended in some way. Lorelia confirms that she is fine, and the prince sits down relieved, saying he was very worried about her. Edgar asks if everything is really okay, and she confirms again that yes. She tells them that the Archduke offered an archmage to help with the investigation, admitting that she was a bit suspicious at first. Cain comments that Jean is just trying to implant one of his minions in the middle of the investigation, but Leah says she believes that is not the case since he also mentioned having a certain fondness for her parents. Cain is surprised to hear that Jean said this. He scratches his chin and comments that he finds all of this very strange and wonders if perhaps the man had received some kind of death omen or something like that. Edgar, for his part, says it would be wiser to proceed with maximum caution, for he knows that Archduke Jean never makes a move without reason. He then looks at Lorelia and asks if she is really okay. She was thoughtful and is caught off guard by the question, and with an awkward smile, she says she is fine and thanks him for his concern. She comments that she also has to thank him for today. She never imagined how much he cared about her parents. Edgar comments that if her parents were alive, they would surely be proud of the woman she has become. She remembers one of the letters that Leah from the other dimension sent, in which she wrote that on Terry's birthday, her father had taken a day off from the gym so that everyone could go on a family trip, all without telling her mother, which made her a bit furious. She comments that honestly, her father could really be impossible at times. In another letter, Leah from the other dimension mentions that her mother taught her how to make apple pie, and she was very happy because now she makes the pies for her beloved husband. In another letter, she casually commented on the wedding gift her father gave her. All that Leah from the other dimension could experience by having her parents alive, she could never go through the same. This makes tears stream down her face. As she responds to Edgar's comment, saying that her parents would indeed be happy with what she has become, she covers her face with the back of her hand and apologizes to both of them for being so emotional. Cain, concerned, says it's okay, and that they understand. Edgar watches her anxiously. Then he timidly extends his hand toward her and gives her a few light pats on the shoulder as a form of comfort. He says, averting his gaze a bit embarrassed, that if it serves as consolation, he is sure that just knowing she has grown and become such a strong and courageous woman would make her parents very happy. She notices that Edgar's hand on her shoulder is trembling, and he seems to be even more shaken than she is. This makes her let out a small laugh. She then comments that she never realized how kind he is. And the beautiful smile of our protagonist makes Edgar's heart beat faster. Still laughing, she comments that she always imagined he was more arrogant and a stubborn person, which is why she never realized how warm Edgar was, admitting that perhaps she had been a bit too rude to him in the past, and that's why she would like to apologize. He says she doesn't need to apologize and that her thoughts were understandable. But anyway, he is fine. Leah stands up, saying she has some commitments to attend to, and bids farewell to both. The two say goodbye, and she quickly leaves the room. As soon as she closes the door behind her, she stops for a minute, catching her breath and mentally scolding herself for almost losing her composure. And as her heart starts to race, she wonders if that's why Edgar seemed so handsome just a moment ago. Shortly after, in a small meeting room, the members of the 1st and 2nd Battalions stare at each other as if they were mortal enemies. Edgar announces that starting today, everyone present in that room is part of the reinvestigation team for the case of the carriage accident involving the Marquis and Marchioness de Velle. And because of this, he would like to introduce a person sent by the Ministry of Magic to assist in the investigation. Please be polite. He adds, looking seriously at the knights. The woman with wine-colored hair and yellow eyes introduces herself as Katie. She is an archmage and also the head of the Ministry of Magic. She says it is an honor to be part of the investigation. The vice commander of the 2nd Battalion comments that she cannot imagine how grateful they are to have her there with them, because he thought they would have to endure only the knights from the 1st Battalion. The two knights from the 1st Battalion look irritated at those from the 2nd Battalion. Then Sir Pepe says that he is also relieved because, unlike the knights from the 2nd Battalion, they will finally have someone intelligent helping them. Both knights become irritated and stand up excitedly, continuing to provoke each other like two spoiled children. Seeing this, Edgar orders Sir Pepe to stop the nonsense, but he seems clearly ignored. In silence, Leah stands up. Quickly, she heads towards the two brawlers. She gives a good smack to her soldier from her battalion, ordering both to sit down and be quiet. The force of the impact is so strong that it makes the poor knight spin around and fall face first to the ground. Leah turns to the rest of the people present, apologizing and acknowledging that she should have offered him more guidance. The two knights from the 1st Battalion are petrified with fear at Commander Lorelia's attitude, while Edgar seems to find her cute and blushes a little. A love-struck man, right folks? A pure green flag, this man. Katie smiles at Leah, saying there is no need to apologize as she is enjoying the lively atmosphere of the place, also commenting that perhaps that's why Michelle likes the knights. Hearing this, Edgar informs everyone that Katie is also Michelle's sister, the consort princess. The vice commander of the 1st Battalion, upon hearing this, comments that he now understands why Katie's smile seemed so familiar. Sir Pepe says she is truly amazing for coming from a distant kingdom and still becoming the head of the Ministry of Magic, and that she must be very admired for that. Katie's expression changes slightly, becoming darker, then she asks if he really thinks that, and that perhaps what he just said is true, but maybe not. Edgar, ever observant, seems to notice Katie's change in expression but says nothing. Katie changes the subject, saying they should start the investigation. Everyone begins the investigation, and after a while, Katie comments that she believes she will be able to find the wizard who created the chimera by examining the residual mana that is in the creature's bones. However, there is a small problem. Upon hearing this, Leah questions what the problem would be. Katie explains that the process to identify the remnants of the mana is time-consuming, and that in addition, the bones are quite old. So this will make it take even longer to extract the mana. Leah asks how long she thinks it will take. Katie replies that it will take at least 3 months. Edgar, upon hearing this, says that is much longer than they expected, and that they cannot just sit around doing nothing during that time, so they will have to find other things to do while Katie extracts the mana. Deacon reminds his commander that 3 years ago they investigated everything there was about the case, which makes it very difficult to find something new. The soldier from the 2nd Battalion adds that, besides that, the coachman involved in the accident was dead, and since the accident occurred in a remote location, there are no witnesses. With these words, silence dominates the place, until Edgar suggests that they re-examine all documents to ensure they haven't overlooked anything. Leah then says she would like him to leave that part to her, because she has a source of information that might help. Edgar becomes curious about who this source could be, and noticing his expression, she says she will explain everything better at the right moment. But for now, she just asks him to please trust her. That same night, Leah is sitting in her quarters with the jewelry box and some letters on the table. She is deep in thought, looking at it, then lets out a long sigh. She takes her pen and begins to write to the Leah from the other dimension. Leah, how have you been? I have something a bit difficult to tell you today. Actually, since I first started receiving your letters, I have been wanting to tell you this, but just couldn't bring myself to do so. Unlike you, in the carriage incident, my parents were gone. The reason I haven't been able to tell you is because it's been so nice hearing your story. It felt as though you were connecting me to my parents, who were actually alive and well somewhere. I couldn't tell you because I knew it'd be difficult for you to share your story with me if you knew my situation. I know you better than anyone, because I'm you. Nevertheless, I'm confessing this to you now because I need your help. We just opened a reinvestigation, but we don't have enough evidence, so I'm asking for your help. Could you give me information about the culprit? Leah finishes the letter and places it inside the box, and she sits there looking at the object, anxious for a response. But it doesn't take long for the box to emit a small ding, signaling that a response letter has arrived. Anxiously, Leah quickly opens the box and takes the letter from inside. She begins to read quickly. The Leah from the other dimension says that unfortunately there isn't much she can say about the culprit, as her father and Edgar never told her much about it, so unfortunately she doesn't know who the culprit is. Lorelia feels desolate upon reading this part. If her other dimensional self doesn't know, then what is she going to do now? She continues reading the letter, and then the Leah from the other dimension tells her that the only thing she was able to discover is that the wizard who created the chimeras is hiding in the Red Desert, and that while she might not be able to heal all her wounds, she promised to help as much as she could. She also thanked her for having the courage to tell the truth, and that it must have been very difficult for her to endure all of that alone. But there is one thing she would like her to know: that she deserves to be loved, that she has worked hard all this time. That's why she wants Leah to know that she loves her very much. The words of the Duchess touch Lorelia deeply, and tears begin to stream down her face. She really needed to hear that, even if it was from her other dimensional self. This gives her the energy to continue. She has achieved so much on her own, gone through various trials, and she will not give up now. No matter the cost, she will find the culprit. The next day, we see Lorelia irritated in Edgar's office. She questions why he cannot allow her to go to the desert. He says he has explained several times that one of the commanders must remain present to guard the Imperial Palace. Leah says that if that is the case, he can stay. Edgar counters, reminding her that he is responsible for the investigation, but she says that he is also responsible for protecting the Imperial Palace. The commander remains silent, but his expression clearly shows someone who is a bit irritated. Leah reminds him that she was the one responsible for obtaining the information. So if she happens to prove to be a liar, shouldn't she be the one to take responsibility? Even knowing that Leah is right, Edgar asks if she has any idea how dangerous the Red Desert is. He continues, saying that besides the monsters, it has never been an easy environment for a woman to endure. He stops speaking before finishing his thought, realizing what he just said. He looks at her worriedly, trying to amend what he just said. But it's too late. Leah looks at him with a clearly irritated expression, clearly offended by what he just said. Then she says ironically that now she understands why. Edgar tries to explain that it's not that. He's just worried about her. Clenching her fists, she asks if he has any idea what she has heard the most since she became the Commander Knight. People underestimating her just for the simple fact that she is a woman, but she thought he was different, that he was someone who saw her as a knight, as an equal. She turns around irritated and says that if it is an order from the commander of the 1st Battalion of Knights, then, of course, she will obey, adding that she is sure he will manage to capture the culprit. Edgar worried for her to wait, but visibly upset she leaves without looking back. Meanwhile, in the Tower of the Wizards, Belle holds the jewelry box, commenting that something very strange must be happening since Leah hasn't sent him any letters. A young girl sitting near him says that he worries too much, and that it is probably some malfunction of the magical instrument he made. The young girl is named Nana, and she is Belle's childhood friend and also a mage. But Belle explains that the letters he is sending are going normally, and that he put a mana stone in the box so it shouldn't break so easily. Nana replies that if the instrument isn't the problem, then the commander must be busy with work. Belle becomes thoughtful, then concludes that he will have to go home to see what is going on. Nana reminds him that he just returned a week ago, so she thinks it is very unlikely that the elders will grant him permission to leave. Belle, with a confident smile, says, "Permission?" She looks incredulous and starts to stutter, saying that there is no way that, and then asks loudly if he really intends to run away. Quickly, Belle covers Nana's mouth and asks her not to speak so loudly and that he will just go and come back quickly. Worried, she asks if he doesn't know what happens to runaway mages. They are marked as traitors of noble magic, stigmatized and condemned as criminals, hunted until the end of their days. Ignoring what Nana just said, Belle snaps his fingers and his body begins to glow. He only tells Nana that in this case he will need to be extra stealthy. And besides that, he will have her here to provide an excuse if he gets caught. Nana says that honestly, nothing good will come from her staying there, so she says she will go with him. Excited, Belle asks if she is really going with him, and she says yes. After all, she couldn't let him go alone, because he would probably die in the middle of the Red Desert, and so the two set off hidden from the tower. Meanwhile, in the Red Desert, a monster emerges from the sands in a swift movement. Edgar cuts the monster in half with his sword. He asks if she is sure that people really live there. Katya, while using magic to heal a knight, says that the Red Desert is the perfect place for mages to hide, because the more dangerous the place, the fewer people around Sir Peppy appears, saying the team is exhausted, complaining that the monsters seem endless and that the sandy wind is brutal. Out of nowhere, one of the monsters leaps into the air with a shrill scream, charging towards the group. With a precise strike, Edgar cuts the monster and declares that they will stop there and return to the village, and then commands the whole team to prepare to return. Katie spots something in the distance and comments that maybe they won't have to return to the village. She points to a small house in the middle of the desert and suggests that they rest there. Edgar agrees, but not to rest, but rather to investigate the whole place. The knights approach the house, and Sir Peppy asks if anyone is there, until a noise of something breaking echoes from inside. Quickly, the knights step back and get into alert position, ready to attack. Edgar signals with his head to Peppy, and he jumps forward, breaking down the door and charging inside the house right behind him. Come all the other knights. With his sword pointed firmly, Edgar coldly warns that if the person moves even a centimeter, they will lose their head, and asks the person to answer all the questions without lying. Before he finishes speaking, something rolls on the floor towards Edgar. Startled, Edgar ends up scratching the woman with his sword, and she says a shy welcome while colorful papers fly around the room from the object that rolled on the floor. And everyone is incredulous, realizing that they attacked normal villagers. Edgar apologizes. The woman says it's all right and that things like this happen. Then the woman serves a meal for the knights. The woman laughs cheerfully, saying that it had been so long since they had visitors that she even felt happy to have a sword pointed at her neck. Right after that, she asks who they were looking for. Edgar asks if they have heard about a wizard who controls chimeras. The woman furrows her brow, thoughtful, and replies that she might have heard something like that a few times, but not recently. And as everyone knows, wizards lose their powers when they have children, so marriage and love are taboo for them. The man comments that there is no better place for wizards to run away together than the Red Desert. He explains with a slight smile that there they can love each other and even have children in secret. The couple smiles, holding hands, revealing that they were once wizards, but are no longer. Some knights get excited about the romance. Katie, in a more realistic way, says that it doesn't matter the reason. A fugitive is a fugitive. And Edgar comments that even so, it is still romantic, and that some people have difficulty expressing their true feelings. Meanwhile, at the DeVille mansion, Leah is wondering how things are going over there. Then she gets a bit irritated and starts to mock the fact that everything is surely going well since they have the great Commander Edgar leading them. Then she remembers how worried he became after what he said. She lies down on the table and comments that he apologized. Then, out of nowhere, the small jewelry box makes a soft ding announcing the arrival of a letter. Lorelia quickly grabs the letter and starts to read. Then she gets up, saying that she needs to get to the Red Desert as quickly as possible, because the letter said that the people responsible for the carriage accident were not just strong wizards. Moreover, they are part of a powerful faction that is rebelling against the crown. And then she concludes that Sir Edgar is in danger. Lorelia gallops quickly through the sands of the desert while mentally going over what was written in the letter, that there will be a revolt at the prince's birthday party. And in this large-scale attack, many lives will be lost, and the one who will cause the most damage is the wizard hiding in the Red Desert, the same one who controls the chimeras. Leah senses an energy coming in her direction. She then makes her horse stop quickly and sees someone aiming at her with a strong light amidst a sandstorm. She grabs her sword, preparing to try to counterattack with her aura. The scene cuts to Edgar fighting against a huge chimera. The fight seems intense and has been going on for a while, because one of the knights asks if he is okay, but Edgar tells him not to worry about him. And to protect the rest of the group, he says this while defending against another energy strike. The commander is determined to fight with everything he has and orders all the other knights to do the same, because it is the only way for everyone to return alive. The chimera does not spare our dear commander and attacks him relentlessly while he struggles to defend himself. The tail of the chimera is also ahead and makes attacks independently, and Edgar, seeing that the attacks are intensifying more and more, knows that he cannot just defend and must attack. With that, he uses his aura to launch an attack that completely destroys the chimera's tail. The man who lived in the supposed inn shouts angrily at the owner for the damage done to his creation. Irritated and promising to kill them all, he casts a spell on the destroyed tail. The tail begins to writhe and reshape. Edgar orders one of the knights to do something to wake Katie so that she can teleport them out of there quickly. Suddenly, the soldier shouts for the commander to be careful. Edgar turns quickly, and seeing that a strike is coming in his direction, he raises his sword to defend himself and barely manages to do so, but the force of the blow sends him flying backward. The chimera looks curiously at its new tail that it just used to attack the commander, and its creator claps proudly at the work of his creation. But before Edgar can process what is happening, another blow is launched in his direction. He defends, but a drop of blood staining the sands of the desert shows that Edgar is close to his limit and has been hit. A new blow comes in his direction, but this time stronger. And despite the commander defending, the attack breaks Edgar's defense and he ends up being hit in the arm that holds the sword. And before he can react, the chimera grabs him and lifts him off the ground, ready to destroy him. When out of nowhere, a beam of light opens up nearby the commander. And Leah steps out of the beam, already cutting the animal's tail and freeing Edgar. Who is impressed and at the same time surprised by her appearance, he asks how she managed to get there. Only she tells him to leave the rest to her, then turns to attack the chimera again. She remembers her brother telling her that the weak point of chimeras is the junction between the various types of bodies, and if those parts are not destroyed, the chimera will continue to regenerate, which will make it so that even an aura master like her will have difficulty destroying such a monster. Leah charges at the monster, attacking all the junction points with her aura. The creator, seeing this, realizes that his creation will be destroyed, so he begins to prepare to give more power to the chimera when he is attacked by a greenish light. Belle and Nana appear in the middle of the battle. Belle, irritated, questions the man, asking what he thinks he is doing and orders them not to touch his sister. Nana, looking at the couple, seems to notice something and then comments to Belle, "If those aren't Nex and Ignis?" The two villains finally take off their disguises, revealing their true identities. Ignis comments that he really didn't expect to find the two there, and in a relaxed manner greets both of them. Almost simultaneously, the loud sound of something heavy hitting the ground resonates through the desert. The chimera falls completely destroyed by Lorelia Nex whines irritably about the loss of his creation, and Ignis comments that it seems the fight has finally ended. Leah looks at Ignis irritably, ready to attack and destroy him. But a light shoots from Ignis's hand and she sarcastically bids farewell to everyone. The brightness increases, enveloping the couple, and then the two disappear. Belle approaches Leah, asking if she is okay. She replies that yes, and then immediately asks how Edgar is. Belle explains that he will be fine and that Nana is healing him. She approaches the commander, worried but is surprised by the worried and at the same time sad look he gives her. He asks her to allow him to apologize, and she interrupts him saying that it's all right and that things could have been much worse, thinking he is talking about almost losing the battle. But he says he is not talking about that. He says that the last time they met, he said it was difficult for a woman to survive in the desert. He admits that he let his anxiety get the better of him and ended up expressing himself poorly, which is why he wanted to apologize to her as soon as possible. He looks at her with a gaze full of concern and sincerity, apologizes, and asks if she could forgive him. Leah's cheeks immediately flush with the scene and her heart starts to race. Then our protagonist makes the best decision of her life. She looks at Edgar and says she knows it's not the best moment, but if he is really sorry, would he mind going on a date with her? Meanwhile, somewhere else, Nex slams his hand on a table, very frustrated, while Ignis comments that they almost managed to destroy them if it weren't for those two mages intervening. Someone sitting nearby laughs, saying that it seems things will definitely not be easy. But he tells the two to stay calm because they will have another chance. After all, they have a spy infiltrated. So when the time comes, be sure not to make any more mistakes. And it seems that Archduke Jean, to the surprise of a total of 0 people, is involved in this whole betrayal. And that's it for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed the story. I confess that the first time I saw this manhwa, I thought it would be a super cliché and bland story. And wow, how I was wrong. This story is very good. I would even say it's one of my favorites. The protagonist is a strong woman, but at the same time is not ashamed to show her emotions and doesn't hesitate to act rationally and charge forward when needed. And the male lead is also wonderful. Romantic, caring, observant, and extremely sincere. The story also has great twists, stepping away from the cliché, and the secondary characters are also quite interesting. But what about you? What do you think? Tell me more in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts and theories. The name of this work is Falling for the Enemy, and our recap went up to chapter 17. And if you want more, don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss any new videos I post. Kisses and see you next time!